What I had a question. So what made you pick the books that you have done so far? Kind of like in the order that you've gone. Is there like a certain reason that you've done the order of books? I went through all the books that you've released so far, and
You
I was
ever
kind of curious on that.
you ever watch Bob Ross?
Yeah, of course.
Like him paint, and he's like, "Oh, it's a
Yeah,
happy accident."
it's
You
a
know,
happy accident.
so what happened was, I was working on the sequel to The Minds Behind the Games, and then I pitched it to my publisher, and they were like, "No." And I went, "What?" And they were like, "You've got like 40 games here already. This is like 3 different books." They're like, "This is like a Minds Behind the Adventure games, this is a Minds Behind the Sports games, and this is a Minds Behind the Shooter games." And I was just like, "But I really just wanna do a sequel," and I'm like, "Done." And they're like, "No, we'll sign you to a 3-book deal, and then you keep adding to all 3 of these different books." So I was basically writing 3 books at the same time. Um,
Nice.
and then after that was over, having done like the first book and then the minds behind adventure, the minds behind sports, and the minds behind shooter, I'm like, let's do some consoles. So then I pitched them the Genesis book, and then I pitched them the PlayStation book, and then I pitched them the PlayStation 2 book. So that's kind of how it all. Again, it was a happy accident. You know, I was never when I first started this, I was not expecting to write 7 books in 6 years. Was not expecting it.
Yeah.
But it just worked out. I had so much fun. You know, I mean, I had to sit down in a hotel room with like one of the lead producers on the original Madden, original NHL, FIFA, and we just talked the shit for like 2.5 hours, you know,
Yeah.
and like talking to like one of the lead programmers on SOCOM. Like I used to like, I was on that game religiously, you know, when it first came out, you know, so
Had
just
that
so
headset on
many.
PS2.
Yes, yes,
Yep.
so many fun moments, you know. Yeah, stuff that like as a gamer just hits you, but then like as a
Right.
journalist, like these people are sharing stories only with you, and that's why I tell people all the time. There's so many video game books out there that are like they're for like couch potatoes. There's lots of pictures, and they're like cute, sexy, like coffee table books, and there's lots of pictures, and there's not a lot of writing. And
Yeah.
it's like I think like my books are perfect. Like you were saying before that you wanted to play WrestleQuest because it would be good to play on your lunch break. And it's just like my books, like there. So if there's 46 chapters in a book, it's 46 games. So like if you're on the train, you could go. You know what? I'm gonna read the Sonic 2 chapter, and then maybe I'll bounce to like Where in the World is Carmen San Diego, and then maybe I'll finish
Right.
with like Prince of Persia or something like that. Like you don't have to read the books in order, you know. And they're written in like a relatable, fun way. Like I'm a college professor, but I'm also a journalist, so I want to be read. You know, a lot of college
Right.
professors just write books to get promoted, and they know no one's ever going to read them. But like, I want gamers of all shapes and sizes to read my stuff. So they're written in a very like down to earth, like conversational style, and it's just basically like I introduce the game. What's the historical value of the game? What's the context of the game? How many copies did it sell? What was the reception like? And then I just open the door to like the developer or developers, because like man, the Vector Man chapter in my Genesis book, I got like
I
7
love that
members
game.
of that team. It's such a great game. And like Jason Wiesner, the
Incredible game.
co-creator of Vector Man, he just wrote the forward to my PlayStation book. He's an amazing dude. So and he also designed the gameplay engine that ended up being like a huge part of like Tony Hawk. Like the gameplay engine that's used in the game that he did, it was that Bruce Willis shooter on PlayStation that like no one played. That engine is actually like the founding father of like Tony Hawk. They use the same gameplay
Crazy.
engine. Yeah.
What was that game
So
called? I can't remember. Ah, shoot.
it's in my PlayStation book, and I completely forgot the name of it. But like it's
Yeah,
kind
I
of like
have
a
that game.
it's like a behind the back like third person shooter, very
Yeah.
similar to One. If you guys have ever played One on the PlayStation,
One was a good game. I
so
enjoyed
One was,
one.
and I interviewed the developer of that game in my PlayStation book too. That was a lot of fun. So
Nice.
Very cool.
yeah, so yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
happy accident. It was basically I did one book, it got a
Apocalypse.
really good reception. Apocalypse,
Yep.
Yeah.
Apocalypse.
Yeah.
But and it's underrated. It's not a terrible game. It just there was so
It's not
much
terrible.
competition on the PlayStation back in the day. You know,
Yep.
so.
For sure.
Super cool, man. I love hearing your dedication to it all, man. I would love to see someone put forward an effort to get some good documentation together for the turbo graphics. You know, just
Me too.
NEC technologies in general. They were. I mean, and to call them an underdog is an understatement. They were
Absolutely.
so below the radar, and there's such a a lack of documentation and preservation of your history and everything.
It's like
agree.
not even it's a lack of documentation, but then it's also like I'll tell you guys another quick story, man. Like I'm at PAX East and I did my panel at PAX East and I'm like, I need to buy at least like one thing for myself. So like kind of like every time I look at this one thing, I could go, this is what I bought at PAX East. You know? And I ended up coming across a copy of the first Fire Pro Wrestling, which was actually released on the TurboGrafx 16.
Yep.
And I bought my daughter like a Princess Leia like Barbie from this guy, and I was just like, "Oh, how much for the Fire Pro on TurboGrafx?" And he was just like, "Oh, you want that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, just take it." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like they had no idea. I mean, the game's probably only like a $10 or $15 game. Yeah, there you go. See, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. See, the thing is though too, this is a lot of people, and this has happened like over the course of writing the books. I'll have people go, "Well, how come you didn't get this person? Or how come you didn't get that person? Or how come this game isn't in it?" And it's just like a lot of the Japanese developers do not want to speak about their games because they're extremely humble. It's just like I made the game, and that's it. Don't want to talk about it.
They just want the game to like speak
So-
for itself.
Yeah, so it's just like the guy that created the Wonder Boy series, amazing developer, and he told me flat out, he was just like, when you make a game, once it's released, it's not yours anymore. So however somebody feels about your game, it's true, it's their truth, so it's just like when you hear that from like, I mean, how many different times has Wonder Boy been reskinned? A ton of times,
Yeah.
So
Countless.
And
yeah,
with PC Engine being the primary console, really, TurboGrafx is secondary, obviously. So I get that. Mostly Japanese developers,
So they're hard to. I mean, I would love to write a TurboGrafx book. I would love to write an original Game Boy book. I would love to do a Dreamcast book. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I got one more book that's coming out like in March. The PlayStation 2 book. So we'll see how that does, and then we'll take it from there. But yeah, man, it's just like there's so many people. Like I'll have game developers message me and be like, "Thank you for telling my story," and I'm like, "No, thank you, thank you for
That is
talking
so
to me."
cool. I feel like
So-
you could get like 15 volumes out of the PlayStation 2 with that library.
Yeah.
Oh my lord.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But see, that's the thing too. So like the PlayStation 2 book has 36 games in it, and I could have easily had like 50. But like so many of the developers were just like, "Oh, I might get in trouble if I say this," and blah blah blah. So I was just like trying to get people to speak on the record about things. That's the thing too. There's no pulled punches in the books. Like if somebody has like a gripe, I tell them let it out. Like if you feel like that's what you need to do, like there's a story in the first book about WrestleMania, the arcade game, and they were talking about how like the Undertaker wouldn't do any of his like mocap unless he had scotch, and like Mr. Perfect was supposed to show up like 3 or 4 times like to do mocap, and he just never showed up, and that's why he wasn't in the game. So it's just like I try and get like like I try and get really fun, interesting stories like that. One of my favorite chapters in any of the books I've ever done is on Night Trap, and Night Trap, so many people think it's like one of the worst games of all time. And the thing is, it's like it was originally released it was supposed to be released on a Hasbro console that never released in 1985.
Yep.
So imagine if Night Trap came out in 1985, the same year as Super Mario Brothers. I mean, the Sega CD was just taking all of these properties that they could get, and they were releasing like those full motion video movies and stuff, and it was just like that helped kill like the Sega CD. But again, if Night Trap comes out in 1985 and you can control a cheesy horror movie in 1985, that game would have done a lot better than it did. And then I listened to like anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours of like Senate congressional hearings, because Night Trap.
I've been through that. Yeah.
Night Trap is like one of those games that's responsible for the rating system.
Yep.
So you have like these senators.
So Night Trap is the twisted sister of video games.
Yep. Exactly. 100%.
Night Trap, Doom, Primal Rage, Mortal Kombat, Lethal Enforcers. But for some reason, Night Trap made it out the worst out of all of them.
Yep.
And there was like one senator that's like, "If you love your children, you will not buy them this game." And he's just like holding up Night Trap, and I'm like, "Oh my god, wow!"
What a great ad! What a great ad!
Pretty much.
And really, I mean, Night Trap not even as bad as Mortal Kombat with the
No,
gore
not
and-
even close.
You know what I
But
mean?
there's-
It was. I
There's
think
an-
it was
there's
the
an
real
infamous scene.
people. The-
Are you guys familiar with the scene I'm talking about in Night Trap?
the removed, like the
There's a
removed
scene. It's still in the game. If you download like the Switch version, there's a
Is it
scene.
tied
Where,
up?
so basically, what happens is it's so
Yeah.
there's these vampires that are coming inside the house, and you have to set up these traps for them to fall into. But for some reason, they have these like big black hooks,
Yeah.
and the hooks
Yeah,
move
they're
like from
so
this
weird.
to this,
Yeah.
and they look like
That's
big
strange.
black members. We'll just say it like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so there's a scene where like these vampires come in with their hooks, and there's like a young white girl in the shower, and they hook
Yep.
her, and it's just like, if there's no context behind it, you're like, what are we watching here? So obviously, a 70-year-old senator will be like, why is that man walking around with a big black? And it's just like, no, that's like their weapon that they use, and
Republican
Yeah, so-
senators.
That's one of those things that made it past
It-
Nintendo, though, right?
it was Republican and Democrats though at the time. That's the funny part. Like, it was just like, the Democrats were not happy. Like, Lindsey Graham was like one of like the leading people, and he's a Democrat. Like, he
Yeah.
he was one of the leading people behind the whole ESRB rating system.
Wow.
So, but it's just like, I love telling that story because it's just like, and again too, Mark Turmel, the creator of NBA Jam, was on the floor, like, as an intern on the Night Trap team. David Crane, the creator of Pitfall, did
Pitfall.
the sound on Night Trap. So there's so many amazing people that like help play a role in one of the most controversial and bad games. It's like the same thing with ET.
Right.
Like, like, is that game terrible?
It can't be that
Probably.
bad if I've got it on the Vita now, right? It's on the Switch
Mhm.
and it's on everything now.
But the thing
Yeah.
is, it's just like, and so I try and tell people, Atari bought the license to ET for like $28 million, which meant that like in order for ET to break even and for Atari to like make their money back, they would have had to sell like 14 million copies of the game. And the thing
What's
is,
going
up
to
until
happen
that point,
anyway?
no game in Atari history had sold that many
I
copies.
sold that.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
And the only person that had the balls to like design the game was Howard Scott Warshaw, because he had Indiana Jones, he had Yar's Revenge, and I think and he had one more game that he
Yeah,
had
that was
sold
Berserk.
over, and he sold over 1 million copies on.
Berserk?
No, not Berserk. Berserk was Brian McNeil.
Okay.
But like, he was the only one. All the other developers are like, nope.
Right.
And he
And
locked,
with the
he locked
time
him
frame, right? It was like a huge time frame crunch because they wanted it like shipped out before Christmas or some shit, right?
28 days.
Yeah,
you know?
28 days. I
And
knew
the
it was like
thing is,
something
like-
ridiculous.
I have a version of ET that's like I guess like a finished, polished version that you can play. Yeah, like a physical
Yeah.
copy. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely not the worst game of all time.
Yeah, it's
the
not.
worst
But
games.
it's just, and it's funny because like Howard is like super he's super mellow and super humble. So he just jokes about it. Like, he's like, I made like one of the best games in Atari history in Yar's Revenge, and I made one of the worst. Like, so I have like the greatest range. Like, he's super cool about
Nice,
it.
yeah,
And
both.
like he's a psychiatrist to like game developers now. They call him the Silicon Valley Shrink. So like, he went back to school and stuff. So it's just like, if you have a game that like tanks, like, that's the guy that you go to talk to, because he's been through it. But I remember
He's the mentor.
talking-
He's your
Yeah,
mentor. If you make a shitty game, just he'll take care of you, man. Just go chat it
Yep.
up.
Mhm.
Straighten out.
Hey, thanks for watching this segment from the Game Junction Podcast. You can catch us live every Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern right here on YouTube or some of our other socials that'll be down in the links below. We hope you check out some of our other content right here on this page, and we hope you come and join us. That is every Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, live right here. We hope you enjoy. See y'all then.